So this particular test we've used quite often in our training. And so this actually does have a piece on it that the trainees had done a great job and put it on. So we're going to remove. Now this one I believe has been on at least a month and a half, maybe 2 months. So I'll get it started just to see how easy or difficult it's going to be to get off. That's about normal, so that's... So at that point, I know I'm going to want to use heat. You can use either your heat gun or you can use steamer. I prefer the heat gun. I know a lot of people really like to use the steam to remove film off. Either one, you want to use heat. I like the heat gun better just because the steam makes the film wet and my hands slide. But use a lot of heat to get it to move so you're not flexing the glass a lot. And what does help a lot is if you have someone else in your shop, you can have someone hold the heat gun while you pull or vice versa. And that makes the job go a little faster. And if it tears like that, that's perfectly fine. Just take it down in strips. Sure. So you're just going to keep heating kind of right in front of where I'm. Maybe even down a little lower. Yeah, there you go. And then you can just keep heating up there. Rarely ever does it leave glue anywhere. The only times I've really experienced leaving adhesive is right when I first started, when I dig my blade in to get an edge up. That's usually the spot I leave some glue. But once I get it moving, generally doesn't leave. And it doesn't really matter whether it's only been on for a month or 2 or 3 as opposed to 2 years. Now, the difference does, with the adhesive that is, where the difference does come, an older piece that's say, been here in Las Vegas on for 2 years and it's starting to really take a beating and wear and tear, that is going to be much more brittle and is going to tear much easier. So you're generally going to get a section started at the top, and as you're pulling, it's going to tear and you're just going to take strips down. And that comes off still fairly easy. It'll come off in strips. As opposed to a piece that's still fairly new, you can get it off in one piece. So we got the piece of film off, came off very cleanly. A little bit of work, not bad at all. Use the heat gun. So I'm going to check now. I generally, as I've mentioned before, I usually don't blade a whole piece of glass down with a blade. It's just, to me, the more times you add a razor blade to the glass, the more risk you're at for damaging the glass. So I do it the least amount of times as possible, but definitely after removing film, you just want to double check for any adhesive that might be left. I'm going to get it all nice and soapy. And I just feel with my hands every inch of it. It's best to be very thorough and really check, because there's nothing worse than when you get a piece down and finished and you install it and all of a sudden you're wondering what that under the film is, and it happens to be a piece of glue. That's much more difficult to get off than if it was just a piece of debris that fell in, piece of dust.